بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
إنك لا تنادي فهبوا يا بني قومي أسودا أعيدوا للدنا أمجاد عصر وفلوا بالحديد لنا القيود.
9. This surah actually showing the real face of Muhammad. It's ordering Muslims fight those who believe not in Allah or the last days, nor hold that forbidden which has been forbidden by Allah and His Messenger. His Messenger mean Muhammad. From who? From among those people of the book, until they pay the jizya with willing and submission and feel themselves subdued. Now look at this. Allah is ordering Muhammad. The Muslims will say to you, we don't permission to you Surah Al-Kafirun. You have your religion, I have mine. The Al-Kafirun surah is abrogated, all of it by the
one way to submit to Islam, to accept Islam, or to pay the tax. And if you refuse to do so, you will be killed. So it was development also taking place in this, you see, in this contradiction of the teaching of the Qur'an toward the Christian and the Jews.
Say, it is the truth from the Lord of you all. Then whosoever will, let him believe, and whosoever will, let him disbelieve. Lo, we have prepared for disbelievers fire. Its tent encloseth them. If they ask for showers, they'll be showered with water like the molten lead, which burneth the faces. Calamitous the drink, and ill the resting place.
I mentioned to you earlier outright that there are terms in Arabic and in the Quran that sound general, but there is evidence that it applies only to a subset, not all. So all these quotations are not to be generalized, that Brother Safa said. First of all, historically speaking, the enmity that was shown to Muslims was not only from idolatrous Arabs, it was shown as well by some other people from what you call people of the book, some of whom, like some of the Jewish tribes in Medina, betrayed the peace treaty with the Prophet and actually stabbed Muslims in the back at the time of the Battle of the Trench and made coalition contrary to their commitment with the enemies. Among Christians, many people were decent, and I'll speak about them. But there were those Christians, for example, among the Byzantines, who gathered a huge army to invade Arabia and destroy Islam because it calls for egalitarian, and they were big emperors. And that is the Battle of Tabut. I don't know how could we neglect and leave aside all of those historical contexts among those particular people who called themselves Christian, violated Christianity, and wanted to commit violence against Muslims. It is not to be generalized. Quote the verse earlier in chapter 60 that says, if people are not fighting you because of your religion, driving out of your home, you treat them kindness and justice, and invasions and killing is not justice, is not kindness, and as such it applies only to those who violated that and betrayed Muslims or committed violence against them. Aggression has to be stopped. Now, if indeed this was a general instruction to fight Jews and Christians, then that raises some logical questions. I said earlier, Islam, and this is the Medinan revelation. In the later revelation, it says a Muslim can get married to a Jewish woman or a Christian woman. If indeed they have to fight, I'm not talking about family fights, real fights with blood, how does the Quran allow even marriage which is a more intimate type of relationship? Historically speaking, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did not fight his neighbor, because one verse he did not even quote. I had it, I'm up front. that fight those who grid you about of the unbelievers. Because they're unbelievers? No. Because they were constituting threat to the Muslim community, including the big emperors of the Persian and Byzantine Empire, and Muslims have to defend their borders. They didn't have any united nation. You have to defend yourself by yourself. Thirdly, he says that those who are not accepting Islam have to pay jizya. And he had a very strange interpretation I never heard of jizya, jaza. In fact, it is jaza, but not jaza, or in return for not accepting Islam. In return, jizya means in return for receiving the services of the state. Because under Islamic State, truly Islamic State, I'm not talking about the 51 nation, he's talking about they're deviating from Islam. I'm talking about normatively in the teaching of Islam, all citizens, Muslims and otherwise, are entitled to all the services, and they are exempt from being, drafted in the army so that they don't fight against their own particular beliefs. Now, how do you finance the state if all the funds are coming only from zakah paid by Muslims? Why didn't the Quran say, but take zakah from Christians also so that you be equal? Well, if you tell Christians to pay zakah, which is not only a tax, it is a religious concept, it is part of the pillars of Islam, you're insulting the religious feeling. Actually, he didn't mention to us something very important, that at the time of Umar, the second caliph after the Prophet, there were some people who did not accept Islam in Arabia and didn't like the term jizya. He said, all right, pay it as charity, just like Muslims pay zakah to contribute their share. Number two, when the question of zakah, it is not a punishment at all, because if a person becomes a Muslim, he pays zakah, which is normally more than what he pays for jizya. Actually, if you calculate zakah, it's actually more than jizya. Jizya is not set in the Quran, it's only a token. Number two, he says that they pay it and while they are humiliated. This is one interpretation that he gave. There are many great scholars like Imam Shafi'i and others say an yadin in Arabic means if they are able, and that's known in Islamic law, that non-Muslim citizens who are living under the protection of Islam are not required actually to pay that poll tax if they're not able to. And they say feeling themselves humiliated. Imam Shafi'i said no. Saghirun has variety of meanings. But like I said earlier, the meaning must be contextual. If a person is not fighting, how come you force him to be humiliated when the Quran says treat him in kindness and justice? This again, what I call the cut and paste approach. And yet he says Saghirun means accepting the authority of the state, because those who fought Muslims before and then finally they were defeated, they're giving that as a token also, not only for receiving the services of the state, but as a token for peaceful relationship, which is far less than what zakah pays. Now, Mr. Safa says that mushrikun apply to Christians. I'm willing to pay $1 million if he shows me a single verse in the Quran if Jews or Christians were called with the epithet mushrikun. $1 million, one place. Not to say that they committed shirk, because shirk has variety of meaning in the Quran, one of which no verse in the Quran ever described Jews and Christians as mushrikun, as he said, idol worshippers. Not one. Listen. Secondly, in Surah Al-Bayyinah, the 80th surah in the Quran, it made a clear distinction between Jews and Christians and idolaters. The word kafaru, and I explained the word kufr again. It says the people who rejected Islam from among the people of the book and the idolaters, mushrikeen. The word mushrikeen was made as a distinct group for those who rejected Islam. Now, but he says, but that's kufr and infidelity. The term infidelity does not have the equivalent in the Quran when it speaks about Jews and Christians. And you have $1 million there too. First of all, lots of millions are available. First of all, okay, the word infidel in the English language means someone who does not have a religion or someone who does not believe in God. Go to chapter 29, verse 46 of the Quran, and it says that Jews and Christians and Muslims worship the same God. Ilahuna wa ilahukum wahid. Here is the Quran say they are believers in God. But the word kufr.
أشرف الأعراب والأعجم خير من يمشي على قدمه باسط المعروف جامعة صاحب الإحسان والكرم تاج رسل الله قاطبة صادق الأقوال والكلم خبيت بالنور طينته لم يزل نور